All right, Jeanne, we're back, and we were talking about, you know, your art career, and then you going to Portland State and finishing up your teaching degree, and how that one thing kind of led to another in a sense. And so kind of, again, just take me through that.
Well, I didn't do a lot of teaching, but I took relief classes for an art teacher that we had in the junior high because she had a state job. So I worked on that, and then I did substitute teaching out at Petersburg, which is no longer with us, but that was a marvelous school. And but then all the time I was doing other things, and we had moved into an old house with a huge upstairs room that I converted into a studio. And so I had room to do a lot of things. I had a very large press because I did a lot of wood blocks, and I did a lot of other things at the same time that I was doing one thing. I would be teaching classes at the art center or doing something else because that's what it took. You know, you couldn't just do one thing or concentrate on one type of thing. I did a lot of portraits, and I brought one to show you. It's one of my daughter and a friend of hers. And I did a lot of things like this. And of course, I don't have many portraits because when you paint a picture of somebody, they want it and they have it.
Right. So this one's really kind of special to you because not only is your daughter in it, but you got to keep it.
Yes, that's one I kept.
Yeah.
Because, and that filled in a lot of my income because they were fairly popular. It took a long time to do, about at least 3 sittings in order to do them.
Wow.
And so that was a good part of my time. A lot of my other time I spent doing wood blocks, wood cuts, and those had to be done in a press. And I had an old-fashioned press with a wheel on top we had to turn, but it worked.
Do you still have it?
No, I sold it.
Oh, you did?
When I moved out of my house. I didn't have any room for it in my second house.
It was big.
It was big.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of wood cuts. And so it just seemed like one thing led to another. I did some murals out at Spooky's in a small room they had there. I did murals all the way around. I did murals up at the high school. And I did one beautiful mural at a retirement home, and it was on the balcony, and it was 40 feet long, and it was a history of Wasco County.
Oh.
But it's gone now.
It's gone. How long did it take you to do that?
Oh, I don't remember. You just start till you get through.
Till you get done.
Yeah.
So you were doing acrylics and painting.
No, I was doing everything.
You were doing watercolor and all of it. So when did you get into the petroglyphs?
When Shari Deans, who was a professor in an Eastern college, did an article on, well, she did a project on manhole covers about the size of this table. And there were all these different manhole covers with designs on them in New York City. And she would start work at sunrise, and they would put police barriers around so she'd be protected. And she had a cover on Life magazine. And when Erna Deans, who was a professor of anthropology at Washington University in Seattle, saw those, she thought, well, that would be a good way to do petroglyphs. So they hired Shari for a season to come down here and into the gorge and work on petroglyphs. She lived out at the old cannery, and also at the same time Robert Butler, who was an anthropologist, was staying there too. So we had a great education.
Yeah.
And so I got to work with her, which was great. And what we would do is when we would work during the day and during her work hours, we would do straight petroglyphs. We wouldn't try to use any art principles, anything. We just make a record. And there are a lot of people that's all they do. But what I did was I interpreted them. I used more than one color. I used emphasis. I used all of the different types of art education that I had. And so I got some beautiful pieces.
Yeah. And you actually had one buyer that bought the majority of them, right?
Oh, yes, John Gray.
Yeah.
He had seen my work, and he'd bought some of it for Salishan. And so he bought the bulk of my collection.
How many did you have in your collection total?
Oh, probably around 100.
Really? And every one of those, you went out in person and experienced that firsthand?
Yep. And you know, you could only carry so much because I had a roll of cloth under one hand and my paints in another. So I didn't take a camera, and I'm really sorry I didn't, but I would have had to find a small one because I had to somehow use one hand for climbing.
Right.
Because a lot of it was climbing. Or like one time, I was on one part of an island, and on another part I could see a beautiful, beautiful one on the side of a rock that was facing me. So I went around, and it was the one time I took my husband with me. And when I was laying on my stomach and reaching over and doing this petroglyph, the center fell out of my brayer, which is a soft rubber, it's a gelatin brayer.
Oh, okay.
It fell down. My husband went down and got it, and that's the only time he went with me.
So he got to go one time, but that was it.
He didn't want to go again.
That was it, yeah.
But I took my kids, and they, from the time they were little, Hewitt especially, they loved going out. And they, at that time, they were about 6 and 8.
Wow.
And they would help me look, because you can only see the carvings at sunset or sunrise.
Okay.
Because you
I didn't realize that.
need to see shadows. Flat light, you can't, as a rule, you can't see much. You can see a lot of pictographs, the paintings.
Oh, okay.
They're easy to find.
But not the petroglyphs.
And there was really no way to preserve those.
Okay.
Except with photographs.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you when we come back from the break about when those started to disappear with the dam and how that changed the landscape, and then just sort of bring us up to current day in the Dalles and some of the changes that you've seen. So that'll be fun. We'll talk about that stuff when we come back. Be right back.
When we return,
I never thought about progress. I just thought about that's going to keep people from desecrating them. And I think it has worked that way. They're fine.